here, and welcome to another episode of the Global Rally Fans Podcast. Today we have a special episode. I'm joined by Dennis, Shinyo Osain, and Mechsicko, who's our special guest today. Guys, you want to say hi before we continue?
Hi,
Hello.
everybody. Hi to all the listeners.
Hello, everyone. Nice to have you here.
Hello, everybody. New voice on the channel. Mechsicko here. Nice to see you.
All right, good. So, Mexico's our special guest today, and he's the founder of the Expert Historic Rally Club, a Dirt Rally 2 club that is steeped in history. And we're going to find out more about the man and the club in a couple of minutes. But I just want to kind of say how excited I still am, even though it's been a few weeks already, about the partnership between Expert Historic and GRF, and it's something that I think is going to be great for both clubs, and it helps to keep the very cool concept of the Expert Historic Club going with more impetus, more momentum, more people than ever before. So, Mechsicko, I'd really like you to talk to us a little bit about yourself. Tell us whatever you feel comfortable with letting us know, and then we'll ask you some more specific questions in a few minutes.
All right. But first to clear up, technically, I didn't actually found Expert Historic. I mean, I found
right.
it, but I wasn't the founder. I glommed onto it first season, and I think I liked it a little bit better than the guy that really started it. 'Cause, he disappeared after that, and one day I realized that the keys were in my pocket, and I didn't know what the little red mark was next to my name. And then I realized I had the ability to make make championships and start running them, and so
Wow.
started from there, having pretty much no idea what I was doing, and things started to slow down a bit. There was one season where I was the only person that participated in every event. Yeah, the numbers dwindled down, and so I started reaching to try to figure out how to give the club a kind of a sense of identity and meaning. It was initially founded by a fellow named Chuck Wagon.
Okay.
With essentially the same spirit that it's in now, although I think we're going to branch out slightly into cars other than rear wheel drive. But it was
Did you ever hear about him again, about the Chuck Wagon guy?
I periodically would get a message from him here and there, and he seemed to have fallen off the internet, which was really a bummer.
Okay.
Seemed a really cool guy, and also a fellow pilot too. And there's other sims we have in common and other real world activities that I'd love to. Chuck Wagon, if you're out there, man, come home.
Nice.
So was it really like that you joined this club, you were very enthusiastic, and then the next thing you know, you were like admin and then owner, or were you given some warning that that was about to happen?
None whatsoever. And I
Wow.
didn't realize it at first. I was just, I think I found the club initially through Reddit, and would chop it up with Chuck Wagon on Reddit, and there before there was a Discord for the club. He started a Discord for the club at one point, but it was kind of my pre-Discord years, so I didn't jump onto that. But it started to, I guess fizzle out. But he didn't tell me anything, and maybe a month or two of not seeing any activity on the club in the my clubs page when I'm looking for championships to drive or stuff to do, and just one day just clicked on the club's website page, and that's where I noticed a little red mark next to my name, which I had no idea what it meant. So
Right.
started looking into it and noticed that my name was next to his as a club owner. So
Wow.
I figured out you have a little red mark next to your name when you own a club.
So okay, that is amazing.
I had no
That
idea
is
what was coming though.
that's really amazing. It's kind of like how I got into my current occupation as well, where I was helping someone with his business. And next thing you know, he's just like, okay, you take over, and gave me his business. So yeah, it's unexpected and weird, but I think it turned out for the best. Could you tell us a little bit about the club, what it's all about? Because not everyone knows about it, and I'm sure it's going to be quite appealing to people who are hearing about it for the first time.
All right. Well, it's originally started as a rear-wheel drive only club, and so far has been untainted by front wheel or four-wheel drive. But we'll be fixing that in the near future. But rear-wheel drive only club, that the real appeal for me was the only club I'd run across that used, had the difficulty cranked up as high as you can, with no assists, hardcore damage, unexpected moments on. But what made it really stand out for me and really drew me in was that it was first person only. I've been struggling with first person versus third person in all sorts of games
Yep.
and simulation since I started getting into games and simulation. There's an undeniable advantage that having your view unrestricted, in some situations, it's of debatable value in driving games or what have you, but especially in shooters and other games, like you can see around obstacles that if you're in the first person view, you can't see around. And
Sure.
all sorts of things like that. It really gives users that play that way a real advantage. And so it turns into either you accept losing constantly, or if you can't beat them, join them. And
Yep.
I don't enjoy the third person experience. I'm really, really drawn in by the ability of recreating the feeling of actually being somewhere doing something. It's just when you can kind of nail certain aspects of a simulation, it just really resonates with me. And
Cool.
so that made the club really attractive to me. Wow, finally I can kind of compete on what I see as an even playing field.
Right. Now the
Other
question is,
masochists that choose to, view the game through first person as well.
right. And by first person, I think, are you talking about specifically cockpit view?
Yes, in Dirt Rally 2, the menu option, they call it cockpit view only, or
Right.
the club.
Right.
But yeah, experiencing the game in the first person of the avatar of your driver.
Right.
You're
Right.
the dude with the helmet on inside the car with your hands on the steering wheel.
Yeah,
not not
because
a not a ghost above, or
right.
not a camera on the hood.
On the hood, right. Yeah, because I mean, I used to drive with a hood cam before I got VR because, for me, it was the view that most closely resembled my setup because I had my wheel in front of me, and the bonnet view or the hood view seemed like what the view out the window would be. But there is, of course, some aspect missing, like the dashboard and stuff like that. So okay, so that's cool. That's how you got into the club. What drew you in? Where does the expert? Well, that I guess that explains the expert part. But where does the historic part come in?
Well, so after I initially started making events and participation just really plummeting, I was kind of searching for a way to kind of separate the club from, just the run of the mill, just your typical championships, follow really predictable rhythms. And when I looked at how actual rally events and races were laid out and run, they were very, there was real, each event, each location had really unique conditions to it. And that was, that got me thinking, what is there a way to recreate the kind of the feel and the spirit of the way real rally seasons unfolded, and really have a limited set of tools to work with in Dirt Rally 2, especially in social aspects or car restrictions. There's so many limitations on what you can do making a championship. So just tried to figure out what I could do within that framework to make it more closely resemble actual an actual season in its entirety. Some events are short, some events are long, but comprised of a whole bunch of short stages. Some events are not very many stages, but all the stages are really long. There's just this really wide variation between numbers of stages and distance driven from one event to the next. And
You mean in real life
uh,
events, right?
for what's that?
In real life events, you're talking about, like,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes, in real life events. And so I started, started wondering, like, is there a way I can mathematically reduce a real WRC calendar year, World Rally Championship calendar year, into something that fits within the framework of something I could do in Dirt Rally 2. And you know, playing around with it a bit and pushing around numbers, I eventually settled on figured out that something close to, if I take the real number of stages driven and I divide that by 4, I get a number that's somewhere in the range of a plausible rally that you can do at Dirt Rally 2. Something, but a number between 5 and 12.
Okay.
Really, it winds up being a number between 5 and 17 or something. But
Okay.
but that's what that gives me a good idea for the range of how many stages any particular event should have. And for distance driven, real rallies were much longer, and so we're dividing the real number by 10, and that kind of derives an appropriate length to shoot for. So then I know whether to use more long stages or combine together a bunch of short ones, that type of thing.
Okay.
And that's how the variation to the events I can get
So
to it. And also kind of figured out it's funner when there's a sensible progression to the degradation. I mean, it stands to reason that at the beginning of a rally or before the stages are driven by everybody, that they're in pretty good shape, and that each successive time that particular stretch of road is used, that it's a little bit worse.
Right.
And with degradation, I also found that it doesn't work so well if you go too crazy with it. It feels like one of those mechanics that's a great idea in paper, and while it's technically more realistic, comes off less realistic in a video game environment. If you were in a motion rig with traction loss axis, so you can feel your car waggling from side to side, you would have the missing information that you need to make slamming along, going over the ruts, make your steering inputs make sense. But as such, when you're just jamming along and your car is kind of uncommanded, just squiggling left and right, it starts to feel like your steering wheel doesn't work, or like when your inputs stop matching what you're
Right.
expecting to feel from the game, that mismatch, for me, it starts to kind of break down the immersion, break down that illusion of really being somewhere doing something. But
Okay.
so
Yeah.
not all the locations are as severe with it. I find that New Zealand, I don't ever use max, for instance. I think Greece is another one that max degradation is just it's a little overdone.
Yeah. Wales as well, I guess.
But those are that's how I derive the
Okay. So that's
variation for the events.
that's really
Starting with
cool.
my
Very cool, Mechsicko, because you've got an actual kind of mathematical framework to scale real life events from real years in the WRC and bring them to the best approximation of Dirt Rally 2 that you can. So that also, I think, includes substituting locations for the best closely matching one, and we'll talk about that in a second, because I have more questions about that for you. But it's really cool. I've done the progressive degradation thing in some of the events that I've done for GRF that I've made. But really, the rest of it is just kind of throwing together a bunch of stages that I think would be pretty cool to do, and nothing like the kind of effort that it seems you're putting into trying to recreate actual events as closely as you possibly can, without making people have to drive 300 kilometers for an event or something. That's really very cool indeed. Um, so what about the location substitutions? What are you looking at for that?
Well, um, for usually when I start off trying to break down a particular year, and I go through and I'll look at any of the no-brainer ones, any of the locations that they're already in the game. That's an easy choice to
Of
include
course.
those. And then there's a couple along the way that are present in all of the historic events that are really easy to exclude because there's no fathomable way to recreate the Safari Rally, for instance, is a 5,000-kilometer monster with they don't have, it's not stages. There's just like 87, they call them control points. There's 87 control points along the way where you're driving not even on roads, just navigating open desert, and hopefully you find the dude with an umbrella or whatever standing out in the middle of nowhere to sign your little punch card so you can continue with the trek if you even make it. But no way to do safari, no way to do Ivory Coast. There's one other slip in my mind that falls into that same real long form cross country trek. So those are easy to get rid of, but then I'm left with a handful of places that I would like to do, but maybe don't exist in game, and that's where the substitutions start coming in. For that way, I try to figure it out is if I can. The best way is if I can find actual old VHS archive footage. There's a wonderful YouTube channel, highly recommend to everybody, called VHS Rallies. If anybody's not hip to it, maybe we can put a link to it down
Yep,
below.
for sure.
Really, really cool channel. It's just this some guy in his spare time just taking old VHS footage of rallies and transposing them to the internet and posting them on YouTube for us to enjoy. So I try to find, if I can find that actual event from that year, videos of it, I'll try to comb through and glean out what it looks like, and maybe it even gives me a hint into directions to push the weather. Like a few seasons ago, I was trying to, going through this substitution process, and Rally do Brazil was one of the options of if I can find a suitable substitute, let's do that. And conveniently enough, I was able to find some old archive footage from that rally, and right off the bat, immediately, it was like, this really looks like Australia. It has this iron-rich red dirt roads, the foliage on the sides of the roads, the elevation terrain changes, the ruts.
Right.
So I realized Australia would be a pretty good sub for that. And not only that, all of the footage I saw, it was raining like crazy. Okay, wet Australia is going to be our Rally do Brazil. And so if I can find a video, that'll go a long way to helping me rule in or rule out one place versus another.
Wow. Okay.
A while back, I did a poor substitution. I think I used Poland as a substitute for Portugal. I mean, they both start with P, right?
Right.
But it wasn't till a bit later, I think it was Fafaz that pointed out, Portugal actually looks a little bit more like Argentina than Poland. And and then I go and start combing, like, that can't be right. And I look, and sure enough, where they were doing the rallies in Portugal, if you squint, it kind of does look like Argentina. So that became my substitute after that. Thank you, Fafaz, for bailing me out there. So I don't always get it right. Everything is a work in progress. If anybody has ideas how to make things better, there's a suggestion box in the suggestion box channel in the Expert Historic Disco. And of course, you could drop it in the GRF Disco as well. I'm all ears. Let's make this better.
Cool.
Have you ever used the homepage EWRC?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know that? Okay. There you'll find lots of pictures from all the cars, and you also see what weather there was, stuff like that. I think this could be helpful. But yeah, so if you already know it, then it's fine.
Yeah, I know it, but I feel like every time I go there, I'm just so overwhelmed by I feel like the information I'm looking for is so buried and jumbled in with so many other things. Like I'm used to finding the information easily on Wikipedia or some other really
Yeah.
straightforward source, and on the EWRC, it's pages and pages and pages of stats. And I do find stuff there, and I've used it in the past to. There was one season, the year that I wanted to do, I couldn't easily find the lengths and the number of stages and the lengths, you know, the
Yeah.
distances driven.
But I think for the weather, their picture section could be quite well, because you can choose the season, you can choose the
Oh,
rally, and all you have
ooh,
to do then just choose a kind of famous car that run the
oh,
rally that year, and then you'll find tons of pictures of that car.
oh man. Well, thank you, because I always felt like there's this vast ocean of information there, and I need to learn how to swim in it, though I don't really know how the search functions work, and eventually I would
Yeah.
just stumble across what I needed and then move on with things. But
Oh,
now I
honestly,
have a
you
good reason to.
use the pictures. Use the pictures. It's really good. It will help you a lot, I guess, in setting up your
Yeah,
rallies.
absolutely. Those pictures worth 1,000 words, especially if
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that substitute or try and get some clues for weather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there might be some
Thank
good
you.
promo images
You're
as
welcome.
well that we're trying to, that we could um, take a look at and represent the rally with those images. That's
Oh,
very
that
cool.
yeah, that would be super cool. Find actual shots from the actual rally.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
And so we've embarked on this partnership, and we've actually started our first expert historic championship, and we're on the 1979 calendar. We've done Monte Carlo. We're almost finished with Sweden. I think you and I have not done our runs yet. It's H3 rear wheel drive. How would you say it's going so far, Mechsicko?
Well, it was really nice to see 80 starts, 75 finishes, I believe, in Monte Carlo. Those are pretty solid numbers.
Yeah,
Um, I'm little surprised that the numbers are as much lower as they are in Sweden. Personally, I'll take 10 Swedens for one Monte Carlo. That's a lot funner of a location for me personally to drive. But it's strange that Monte Carlo just draws in the masochists apparently. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm really enjoying this. It's definitely been a shot in the arm for our participation and engagement, and a positive benefit on all fronts. Yeah, I couldn't be happier with the merge here.
So do you think people are just waiting for the last minute to do their Sweden runs, or do you think Sweden is just not popular?
Uh, Probably a little column A and a little column B, because
Okay.
the at the top of the charts, the speeds have been pushed up to a point where just YOLOing it is probably not gonna get
Yeah.
you there.
Yeah.
Definitely not for me. I won't speak for everybody, of course. So just been, you know, Sweden's a location I really enjoy, as long as the visibility is good. That's another thing I shy away from when I'm making events. I try to not do things that severely impact visibility,
Right.
because like we were already deprived of so much of the other information, and when you reduce the visibility to a certain point, for me anyways, it just stops being fun. It's an endurance contest, not a enjoyable thing.
Right. It's how much pain you
Unfortunately,
can endure.
that sort of makes Scotland uh, a location I tend to avoid. And if I do any Scotland events, I almost never include any night events, because Cody's did something
Yeah.
very weird with the draw distance, where your vision just sharply falls off. It goes like 100 meters out and then turns into a black wall, and that's not how things look at night at all. I can,
Yeah.
when I'm in a real car at night with headlights shining, I can see stuff a whole lot farther into the distance. And it's fine if you're just driving H1 cars or maybe even H2, but once you get to H3 speeds on up, you're moving. It becomes a memorization game. So the people who do really well are just the ones who really memorize the stages. And to me, it's a little anti rally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the night draw distance makes it where you're not really relying on pace notes and your visuals as much as remembering, muscle memory. But
Okay.
what was the question?
The question was just why you thought that is Sweden less popular, or
Oh, right, right.
and you mentioned that Sweden is cool as long as you can see, and then you brought up the very good point about Scotland. Recently in an
Yes,
event
yes.
that I created myself, I crashed out in the night stages in Scotland because um, yeah, I just couldn't
Scotland
see.
is Scotland, indeed, as Mexico said, the night stages are really, really strange.
Yeah.
On the rally that you created, Joe, I had the exact same issue. I had I couldn't see anything at night, or
Yeah.
I thought it was really strange. While during daylight, with like no rain, it was just going very good.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so,
Uh,
and I think especially with VR, we get all these kind of auras around things, depending on the headset
yeah,
that you have. And some of them
yeah,
can look like really bad optical illusions.
yeah.
So anyway, so I'm glad, Mexico, you're trying to avoid um, bad visibility stages for all the reasons that you mentioned. Sweden, I think, is something that I'm practicing for right now, and it's really hard, I think, to do very well in it compared to the very best people. I did well in Monte Carlo, and I don't think I'm gonna be. I think I'll get sixth place at best, really, in Sweden. Um, but that kind of brings me on to um, I guess the state of the game itself, right? It's quite an old game now. We have to admit, and we're all doing the same stages again and again. Um, but I am finding that people, there aren't that many people who are hardcore enough to stick out and do all the events, even if they don't like the locations. Is that something that you're finding too? That people kind of pick and choose, and nobody's really, or not that many people are interested in just doing the whole championship campaign sometimes.
Well, I've noticed even under the best of conditions, that there seems to be a bit of a participation curve. There's always a dip in the middle, usually a little bit of an uptick, and seasons seem to end maybe half to three quarters of the entrance. But the people skipping stages and picking and choosing. This is another one of the reasons why I don't really like ADR after dropped round is
Okay.
especially just makes a lot of folks, especially if they drive real consistent. There's that I don't have to suffer through that location I don't like because I'll just burn my mulligan card on that. But there's a lot to be said for it, but I feel like ultimately it kind of does more harm than good for having the option being there. But yeah, I don't really know a good solution to to
Right. So the ADR
keep
is
keep people slugging through the entire thing, other than making it a point system that's fair enough where regardless of people's performance, there's something to be gained out of it. If you have the
right.
really punishing point system where the just a few places down, there's no hope whatsoever of a redemption arc, even if the person at the top crashes out every event and you do great, you're still not going to catch them, kind of thing. I feel like that demoralization doesn't help. That's where having tiers. Right now we got a pretty big group. Well, how big the group really is yet to be seen. But I think splitting into tiers where there's two different levels of driving going on, I think would be a helpful thing for people that start
Right. And we have the ability
getting
in
browbeaten by the experience.
Yep, we have the ability in GRF to do that. Our special events are run in three tiers of three levels of competition, and that's very cool. Just to clarify for those who don't know, the ADR, or after drop round, is a system that some clubs use so that if for example, if there are 10 events, you will only score points for the 9 best ones, so you can drop your worst scoring round. And is that something that the WRC does at all in real life or not?
No, not at all.
I don't think so.
No, okay.
No.
So
Also, really, the real life point system is extremely brutal too.
right.
It goes to the point I was just saying. If we just copied the WRC point system raw, I mean, give most of the score sheet, most of the people winding up with 0 points each week.
Yeah, that's not good. That's a surefire recipe for people just to give up. We see that, I think, sometimes when we get a very fast world-class driver join the championship, and if as soon as they don't do well in one event, they might just not do any of the others because they're only in it to win it rather than place fourth or fifth. Um, and that's kind of sad. It's always good to compete with the very best as well. Um, so, does anyone have any questions they want to ask Mechsicko? Because I've got a bunch of things that I want to get through. But if you have something, Dennis or Stein, you want to go?
No, I'm
Yeah, if
listening
one,
very attentively. I'm very interested. So please continue.
Okay, Dennis.
I just have one question, Mechsicko. Have you always been into rallying, or I mean, or are you also into real life historic rallying and modern era rallying, or is it only for the game?
I knew this question was coming. Well, I hope I don't disappoint any of my fans. My interest in rally came really late in life. As a kid, I grew up really, airplanes were what was cool, and cars were like what rednecks were interested in, right? And and my only contact with rally, like when I was really young, was seeing like Group B videos of like the road full of idiots while cars almost smash them, or cars almost crashing and killing people where they're only saved by the tree that they're barely covered by and standing behind while the car wraps around it in front of them, type of thing. And it just at that point in my life, it's like, wow, this looks like the stupidest thing in the world. I had no idea I was ignoring the most fabulous part of the golden era of rally history. I could have watched Group B unfold live if I had the sense. Although I do remember really enjoying what to me I called Mickey Thompson's off-road, but there's this whole weird sordid story involving Mickey Thompson and him and his wife getting murdered and all this stuff, and then it got changed to some other name, off-road. And then
Wait, but that was a game on the Nintendo, wasn't it?
It was later a game on Nintendo. This was one I used to enjoy popping quarters in, because it actually had a steering wheel and a pedal, a gas and a brake pedal. There were no gears.
I actually think I have the Nintendo game. I have to check it out later, but I think I have it.
And so this
that
was
would have been my first, I guess, foray into dirt driving. But
that was an arcade game.
Of years when I was already I was into simulation because I fly gliders in real life.
Oh, okay.
And since 2004 or 2005, I started flying in a glider sim called Condor.
Okay.
And being able to kind of jump back and forth from a real cockpit to, at first just at a desk with a joystick, like I could feel the immersion was within reach, but sitting upright at this desk, like the kinematics of everything were all wrong. And that kind of is what set me on my quest to figure out what's I'm not made of money, so I can't make some super fancy simulator. So what are the components of simulation that really matter? Like what really drives the immersion? What really sells this experience as something you're really doing? And that helped me kind of establish sort of a checklist of like the 4 critical ingredients. One of them is proper seating position. In a glider, you're semi-supine. I mean, your shoulders, your knees, and your toes are basically all in the same plane. Like you can set a board and it would touch all 3 at the same time. You're really leaning back like a Formula One car. having primary controls that reflect the reaches and ranges of motion, and especially forces, if you can work that out, force feedback joystick, force feedback steering wheel, really vital ingredient to have that active component that's informing you of the changes with the craft, whether that's a car or a plane. You're really relying that seat of your pants flying, seat of your pants driving, is really reliant on this tactile feedback and response, even more so than the visual. But also, fill thy eye with screen. The more of the world, the more of your view is taken up with that virtual world, the more kind of lost in it you get. If you can really see beyond the borders of your screen, you're reminded constantly. You're just sitting in your underoos in your living room, pretending you're driving a car or whatever. But when I put my VR headset on, or if you have a nice triple screen setup, or when it encompasses a certain amount of your vision and field of view, you start losing yourself in that. And it wasn't until I got into VR later, which was always kind of the holy grail of simming, even as far back as 2005. You could see it coming, but the technology just hadn't really coalesced yet. It took cell phones and the screens, and a bunch of stuff had to be brought up to speed. But come up to 2016, Vive and CV1 launch, and eventually I got a CV1, and was just really hungry for experiences that I can recreate, a believable cockpit environment. I've got my glider cockpit. It is what was the first rig I had. I have a separate cockpit I use for mech piloting, which is the actual origin of my name, not the country Mechsicko, but because I'm a sicko for mechs, like walking tank, stompy robots. Cockpit for that. But I I started getting into sim racing because it's a really easy cockpit to recreate. There's all of these peripherals that are widely available, so widely available that there's even a thriving used market for even decent stuff. Yeah. So I think I got picked up like a used G29 or something, I think I started with a Momo, and it was again was one of those situations I could feel the immersion would be there, but just not at that level. The notchy gears and the plasticiness and the lightness of it, and eventually got a G29, and that's when I feel like the journey really started to begin. But because of the ability to recreate the kinematics, the seating, the feel of a car cockpit is not really, it's pretty low hanging fruit with the options that are out there. Between you can, if you got the wallet, there's checkbook solutions. You can throw at all of it, or you can DIY a bunch of it, because it's all pretty simplistic controls. And I realized pretty quick though that I get bored driving in circles. Like get out on a track and doing lap after lap, trying to shave a 10th off my hot lap or whatever. Just that really kind of had limited appeal, although it was fun in VR, just because of the driving some exotic car in some exotic place, or just cruising around in a Assetto Corsa or whatever. But eventually Oculus, the company, bribed Codemasters to add virtual reality support to Dirt Rally 1. And that very quickly became kind of the go-to, the benchmark, like driving VR experience for immersion, because there's a lot of things in rally driving that really sell the experience. You're bounding along these ungroomed roads, and there's trees flying by and rocks and all these obstacles and close proximity things that really drive home the speed that you're driving at, a lot more than you could be doing 180 miles an hour in a Formula One, and the grandstands are whipping by, and it feels fast, but it feels a lot faster just driving 60 miles an hour on some crappy dirt road, trying to negotiate bends with off-camber turns.
True.
The sense of speed that you get from it, plus the locations are just beautiful. It's very not boring. And you can also just stop the car and quote unquote get out, which I like to do, and
in VR,
soak up the sceneries. And even in Dirt Rally 1, it was obvious that Cody's kind of stumbled on something special, like their world building, their environments. are substantially more detailed than
So can
any
you
other
say that
driving sim that
again,
I've seen, at
Mexico?
least any that work in VR. Most of them, even if you just stop the car and look around at everything, it looks like paper mache and cardboard cutouts, and it's meant to be viewed doing 100 miles an hour.
I think we had a bit
And
of a
let alone
sound.
if you get out of the car, and then the worlds feel really static and lifeless. But in Dirt Rally, especially Dirt Rally 2, there's just all of these little details and elements that a lot of people might not notice, but I sort of focus on, and it really draws me in. If you stop the car and get out, there's volumetric clouds that are moving. There's airliners kind of stitching in and out of those clouds. You can hear small aircraft droning overhead. There's soaring birds circling. There's flapping birds flying to and fro. Insects buzzing about. The spatial audio. You can hear the rushing water from the direction the water would be rushing from. The moving leaves and all the trees. Like, it's like the world building, especially Dirt Rally 2. Its levels are more detailed than half of the games that are made to be experienced on foot in VR. I mean, I guess that's probably what helps make it run like a pig, but
very
man, does it look
interesting.
good.
So
Never
Mexico,
realized that, but I also do not play in VR.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
Mexico.
think you can get out of the car
No,
unless you
not at
have your
all.
headset.
No.
Maybe if you were using track IR like head tracking, because that's 6 degree of freedom tracking too. If you had that on and you're still within the tracking range of the cameras.
I use a console.
Oh, well. I'm sorry.
No problem. None of that
Nothing
luxury
but
for me.
no knock on consoles at all, and I'm glad that Dirt Rally 2
No.
is an option there too, a viable one.
No, I'm fully aware that there's a lot more possibilities that you have on a PC than on console. So
yeah, just in peripherals alone, just being able to make your own joystick, make your own handbrake or whatever. You don't have to worry about PlayStation
of course,
compatibility.
Yeah.
For me, that's the instant deal breaker, because the whole thing is predicated on having the touches, the interface that feels the way I want, and that includes building some of the stuff, because I can't afford to buy the super nice versions of some of this stuff, and a lot of the cases I kind of prefer the stuff I build anyways.
Yeah, but as you said before, it's what I also think the cool stuff about sim racing is that you can get really good stuff for not a lot of money, and you can have huge amounts of fun with a used G29 or G920 wheel. It doesn't even have to be the most expensive one to enjoy a game.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, that's the G29, G25, G27. Like, that was kind of for entry level. Like, that's for the fun begins.
I'm still using a
I started with a
G27.
G920, which is the Xbox version of the G29. So I know
Right,
exactly what you're talking about. And
yeah,
until today, I think it's a really good entry level wheel.
Oh, especially with a couple simple mods. I found myself really struggling with the brake because it was just too soft and mushy. It's
too soft.
I thought it was just
too stiff.
It didn't feel like a real brake. Yeah, it was too soft in the initial preload stroke, and then you hit a brick after a certain amount of travel. Like, I just found it really difficult to modulate my braking. Like, what I was pushing with my foot didn't feel very well correlated with the amount of braking force in game, and so I found myself crashing a lot because my braking sucked. And so I bought this. It was the cheapest like mod kit I can find for it. I think they went out of business, sadly. Nix Sim with an X, Nix Nix Sim. But it was a progressive spring, and it came with its own little rubber block that was a softer rubber, and it felt a much more, had a much more plausible kinematic stroke to it. And it, was it as good as a load cell? No, but it made it passable. I stopped instantly crashing all the time because of my brake. Like, I got to where I can start learning to drive and not be learning to compensate for this weird brake behavior that doesn't feel like the way real cars work. And then also the shifter, I felt like the shifter, the forces of it were just way too light. And so I found a video, somebody figured out how to increase the preload tension on, there's a little there's a little spring-loaded detent ball that determines like how hard it is to chink through the gates. And so I increased the spring load tension on that. Then I made a little knob extension so I could accept real shift knobs. So once I had this little extension, a real shift knob on it with increased forces, like that. Did it feel like a real shifter? No, but it felt a lot closer to a real shifter than before. Close enough that it stopped drawing my attention to it because it felt like a toy at first, and it would distract me because it felt just so. I just needed it to feel a little more meaty. That's all.
So to me, Mechsicko, it seems that you're really drawn into the whole experience of immersion, as much realism as possible, and that's the theme behind the Expert Historic Championship as well. And you got into rally quite late on in life. So did you start watching VHS rallies and stuff specifically for the club, or is it something that you got into watching the historic stuff just because you were into rally?
It's hard to tell which came first. I think I discovered VHS rallies in the process of just trying to do some research of like, what did this one event look like or whatever, and hey, what's this channel, and oh my god, look at all this cool stuff, and started finding all this rad footage of super cool cars that I'd only seen in game or whatever, and started learning, some of the names and faces that helped shape the sport, and then started really going down the rabbit hole on Group B stuff. And
right,
there's some really cool documentaries out there. Like if anyone hasn't watched, like, it's called Like Riding Balls of Fire. If anyone hasn't watched that documentary, dude, go watch it today.
I know. I downloaded it and I keep trying to remove it from my download list because it looks like a porn title.
It is, yeah. It's not the best named one, but it could be. I found it free on Tubi. It kept getting yanked off of YouTube for copyright violations and DMCA crap. So, but it's as far as I know, it's still available to watch on Tubi. Maybe we could throw a link to that as well later.
Yeah, okay, that would be pretty good.
Check that out if they want. Very cool movie.
You could have just called up Dennis and found out all the information just from his brain. Cause
I don't know everything. It's not like that.
You do.
It sounds like you know where to look to find the things you don't know.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be picking your brain more as we move forward.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And so you also mentioned that you make stuff, like you've modified some of the equipment. I should get some information for my G27, which is what I still use. But talking of the things that you make, one of the things that really caught a lot of people's attentions are these beautiful trophies that you've made in the past for people. You want to tell us a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Yeah. So that was sort of goes back to another question of like, what can we, you start having the lack of feeling like there's something at stake, right? Like when I play this game and I'm into a season, like my heart is pumping. I really care about the outcome of that event, and it's just, I think I remember Wookie talking about this on one of your original podcasts, and it's just how, eventually you get to that point, you realize like, dude, I'm an old man just sitting in my living room, like, this is silly, but then you can't help but get kind of invested into it.
Mechsicko, you're cutting out. I can't hear you right now.
Oh, maybe I have my hand over the phone or something.
Oh, yeah. Weird. So you got as far as saying Wookie, and then Wookie,
all right, so,
you're sitting in the living room.
Like, I remember Wookie on an older podcast saying how, even though he's a grown-ass man, that he finds himself just totally sucked into this race, and just really caring about the outcomes of it, and this whole, just getting really wrapped into it. And so I find myself, kind of getting really sucked into it like that too. But then with, at the end of a race, like whatever, that's it, or the end of a season, it was just so melodramatic. And, looking back over a season, especially if it's one I did well, just like how much effort actually went into, getting prepared for each race and having the car all tuned. For some people, there's probably their naturals, and some of it comes easier than others, and other locations really got to struggle and work my way there. And just really felt like there should be something more at stake. And I always thought it would be kind of fun to make trophies based off of Hot Wheels cars. Just make find a Hot Wheels car, or it doesn't have to be Hot Wheels brand, but something, a little model car that size of the car that somebody drove that season to victory, and make a first, second, and third place trophy in the same style, but making it where the first place trophy is obviously the larger, grander one with gold accents, and the silver the middle sized one, and bronze the smaller and least elaborate of them. Just kind of a standard trophy format, but just seemed like it would be a fun thing to do. And one day just bought some Hot Wheels and started having at it. Had a lot of time on my hands during pandemic, and it turned out to be a lot of fun. And it really did create those high stakes feeling for the season. And especially at the in the top 10, where there's really a shot at leaderboard shakeups, where any one of the top 10 could actually bag first place by the end of it. It got created a real something worth competing for.
Yeah,
I really wish I could have kept that going. It was sort of an expensive habit.
yes.
My goal was always to kind of figure out some kind of set up some kind of GoFundMe or something, and have it all transparent, where people can, just to generate enough money to actually buy the parts and ship the stuff out. I think it came out to about $150 a season or something to keep it going.
Yeah, the shipping must have been
But it was always
expensive.
just kind of lazy and kind of behind on things. Just one more bureaucratic effort that would slip each time. So I would just kind of do it out of pocket, but was doing it because it's fun to do. And luckily enough, by a lot of hard work and several miracles along the way, I did manage to win two of them under, there was still some pretty fast folks running at then.
Right, Ed
So it
Rosa,
felt pretty good
Pookie, Typecast
to actually
Wookie.
be able to make myself one.
Did you bother to make
But
yourself one in the end?
yeah, I did.
Okay.
I was making them in batches of 3, and I have 2 of them proudly sitting on my shelf here. And technically, I'm in trophy debt because 2 seasons have gone by where I was buying cars and telling people about their trophies I was making, and wound up getting a new job at the place that I still work at almost a year and a half later, mostly full time. And yeah, it's just a lot
Yeah.
harder to find the time to
Well,
do
you're
it.
not.
Ironically, I can afford to burn the money at this point. I mean, not really, but a lot more than I could during the pandemic. But just the real lack of time to do it, and haven't gotten it together for a while. But
Yeah, I know you're
it's something
really.
I would like to circle back to and revisit in the future. I think we were talking about it. Maybe
Yeah, we don't
a
know. I mean,
longer.
maybe if we get some like merchandise sales or something, we could talk about that at some point. But it really seems that you're a very busy guy now, and you say you're a bit behind on trophies. You're not the only one. We're still waiting for a GRF trophy from a certain race organization that kind of is a bit ethereal. Um, yeah, so the other hallmark that I wanted to really quickly mention is your fantastic write-ups of what transpired, and maybe once this season, this pilot season of our championship partnership is over, we could have you back on the show and you could give a summary of how things went down, and the results of the whole thing, because they were very entertaining to read indeed. Um, so yeah,
Well, I'm glad to know at least somebody enjoys them.
yeah,
Sometimes I
yeah,
feel like I'm
absolutely.
shouting into the ether.
No, no, it's cool. Your efforts are definitely appreciated. Okay, so I think we should probably wrap up. I don't know if I
I
know that.
really have to go.
Yeah, exactly. And Shinyo too as well, I'm sure. So Paul, it was like fantastic having you on the show. Maybe we could, for a video version, we could maybe have some pictures your trophies, just to show people what we were talking about. But yeah, really thank you for your time, and thanks Dennis and Shinyo for joining us as well. I'm looking forward to driving Sweden. Well, not really, but I'm going to do it, and the rest of the competition because there's some very fast top level people to compete against, and it's a great opportunity to drive against world class drivers. Paul, thank you so much for doing that, joining forces with us, and appearing on the show.
Well,
Oh,
thanks.
Joe.
Thanks, Mexico.
Yeah, well, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Pleasure to join forces with such a prestigious outfit as GRF. You guys have always been my other favorite club for a while, and we had a lot of crossover with drivers and members. Anyhow, so feels a pretty natural fit, and definitely appreciating other people doing some help with all the lifting that they're doing. Um, yeah, I was feeling bad where things were stagnating and wasting away when it was just hinging on me getting around to it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well, it was
thanks for
definitely a project
sparking this
worth
into
doing.
motion.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's worthwhile for us all. So great. Shinyo, Dennis, thank you for joining me. I know you guys have to
Yeah,
run.
thanks for having us. Yeah.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm signing out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
We'll have another
Bye.
episode soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye,
Goodbye.
Bye.
everyone.